What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast, and this is Friday. It's the Undefeated post-weigh-in show, the best betting video for MMA on the internet today. And you know what? It's a special week because it's UFC 267. If you're stateside, it's a free fight. We're all stoked about that. There's another big pay-per-view next weekend, and I'm going big for the big double pay-per-view weekend. That's right. I'm bringing you a guest on the Undefeated Friday show, and not only a guest, but one of your personal favorites, none other than my guy, James Lynch. James, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Doing great, Clint. Always love talking fights with you. One of my favorite people in this crazy industry. Thank you for having me on, man. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure, man. Right back at you. We've been having a little bit of a scheduling issue. We've been trying to get James on the podcast as normal, and I thought, you know what? What the hell? Let's just get together on a Friday. It worked out, so I'm glad you're here, man. Thanks for jumping on.
Me too. And should mention my kids' swimming lessons pushed a couple months, so I will be available on the Mondays. So for a little bit anyways, and then maybe after that, we'll have to go back to trying to do this on a Friday. But either way, I always try and make time for you, man. I always appreciate it.
And we always appreciate it, man. Your view is invaluable on these things. So we got unfortunately a 14 fight slate to go through. We dropped one after the weigh-in, so let's get this bad boy rolling. Let's go ahead and start with that. Damir Ismagulov looked awful on the scales, man. I mean, he had to be like helped on and off the stage. It was ugly, and of course, I locked in a Magomed Mustafayev bet right away because if they were to allow him to continue, I think he was going to take a canvas snap on Saturday. The fight's been canceled. The bet pushes. C'est la vie. We move on. The real first fight of the night is Tagir Ulanbekov taking on Alan Nascimento. Tagir came in at 125. Nascimento came in at 126. Both guys looked really great on the scales, if I'm being honest. Nascimento, a guy that I feel like is kind of flying a little bit under the radar. I myself have a bet against him. I did parlay Tagir Ulanbekov, and it's kind of scaring me, man. He's one of these guys that I feel like has been good. He's been serviceable. This is the Russian invasion. They want these Russians to do well and win, but he's the kind of guy with the kind of grappling that could cause Tagir some problems, so I'm a little nervous. I'm not cashing out or anything, but I'm nervous about that bet because they were kind of a 1-to-1 at the faceoffs, man. These guys stood toe-to-toe. I think it's going to be a good fight. How do you lean on this first fight? Did you see anything at the weigh-ins or faceoffs that kind of swayed you, James?
Yeah, nothing to really take away from. I'm with you there as well. The Russian is the way to go on this one. If you're looking to make a pick or looking to make a bet, I think he's the way to go. I just haven't been that impressed with Nascimento. I mentioned this on my previous or on my podcast this week, so we're on the same page there. I know that, believe it or not, there's going to be some stuff we disagree on later in this card. So I promise you this will be entertaining for the viewers at home.
I love it. I can't wait to get into that. And actually, you know what? We're not even going to make them wait, James. The next fight up is Hu Yazong taking on Andre Petrowski. You've got Hu coming in at 186. Petrowski made 185.5. Hu looking mean up on the scale, gave a big flex. I like what I see from him. Andre Petrowski, the dude is all arms. He's like a T-Rex. He flexes and it's like this. So we all know he's one of these crazy wild man types, just powerful, full of muscle. James, when they faced off, Hu is massive. If people remember, Hu made his UFC debut at heavyweight. Then he dropped down to 205. Now he's at 185, and it looks like a young fighter who's finally on track, finally found his home, and he looks great down here at 185. He's got a massive size advantage. And that was enough for me, James. I pulled the trigger. I got plus 195 on Hu Yazong. I had kind of just a weird gambler's intuition tingling on the back of my neck on Monday. I said I might throw a blind dart at him. Seeing how much bigger he is than Andre was the thing that kind of pushed me over the edge. First 10 foil hat read of the day. I went ahead and bet Hu Yazong on Saturday, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, James.
Yeah, I completely disagree. And he's not that much bigger, actually. He's only got a 3-inch reach advantage, height advantage. The reach advantage, Andre Petrowski has the reach advantage. Here's the thing. I know where you're coming from on this, especially. Petrowski didn't look great in his debut, and I'm with you there. He should have beat Michael Gilmore a lot better than he really did. I just chalk that as up to one bad fight. I think overall, this guy's got a lot more experience. His opponent should not be in the UFC. I don't know of a 3-2 fighter across the board that would make it to the UFC. And, the UFC is obviously pushing, the Asian market. So that's part of the reason why this guy's in there. You mentioned the fact he's moving down to middleweight. I know he made weight. That's the good part of the way. But the bigger they are, the harder they fall. When fighters, typically drop a weight class, they're a little bit more susceptible to the knockout. I think, and I know Petrowski's not exactly like a knockout artist per se, but he's more of a, obviously actually, I shouldn't say that. He's got a couple TKO wins as well. But But I don't know. I just think it's crazy to back a guy who's only got 5 fights. And Petroski, at least, even leading into the Ultimate Fighter, had some experience. Fought Aaron Jeffrey, fought a lot of these guys on the regional scene in a pretty good promotion as well. Leading into this, in terms of who he's fought in the regional scene, I should say, that makes me feel better about going on the side of him. This is a fight I basically told everyone to avoid, but I don't even think there's a dog situation here. Maybe he does. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe this is the division for, who in this fight, but I just think it's crazy to put that much, to back anyone who's only got 5 fights going into the UFC. That's a record that probably wouldn't even make it on Contender Series, if you think about it.
No, you're totally right, man. And I completely can understand where you're coming from that. I do agree with basically what you're saying. The situation here is kind of unique in my opinion, though, because like I said, I think the weight class is a big factor. Like if the UFC saw enough in this kid to give him a shot at heavyweight and then let him take a 2-3 year long layoff to, rush up on his skills and then bring him back at the proper weight class. He's a young fighter. I get scared when people hop weight classes when they're older, when they start going up and chasing the glory days, or worse yet, when they drop a weight class and suck themselves out to death trying to get that last little bit of an advantage. Like, that's not what's happening here. Hugh actually belongs here, and he's young enough that he can make this weight class for some time moving forward. So I think we're going to see Hugh 2.0 based on this long layoff. He's training at Tiger Muay Thai, one of the best gyms in the world. So I trust Tiger to improve on a kid like this. And if the UFC has given him this kind of a shot, I kind of trust that eye. The other part of it is it's honestly a bit of a fade on Andre Petrowski. Everybody couldn't be higher on this guy because of how he looked on The Ultimate Fighter, because of how he looked at the finale. I think he gasses, man. He's a guy that goes power, strength, everything he does. And I think that's going to wear him down. His opponent on The Ultimate Fighter finale is a guy that I'm not sure should be in the UFC either. So he was able to dig deep, get the 3rd round finish in that particular fight, but it was looking hairy there in round 2 for a little bit. So I'm just not sold on Petrowski. I've seen who take the kitchen sink from guys at 205 and heavyweight, so I think he's durable enough to stay in this fight. And really, in my opinion, that's kind of all he needs, because as soon as Petrowski slows down, if who is still standing in front of him, all he's got to do is punch him in the mouth, and I think Petrowski will fall over in the 2nd or the 3rd round.
Very fair. Just one last thing got to mention. Look who this guy's training with. You talk about Tiger Muay Thai. Sean Brady is who Petrowski's getting to train with. Pat Sabatini, 2 really outstanding fighters on the UFC roster. So I think if he can handle a Sean Brady in the gym, I think he'll be fine in this case. I know he's a welterweight, not a middleweight here. And the last thing is, if this is any other fighter, if who's a Canadian fighter, for example, he's 3-2 and took a 2-year layoff, he's getting cut. He's not coming back. The reason he's getting this opportunity is because he's Chinese. That's a market they're targeting. I don't think that's controversial to say. We've seen a lot of fighters with not a lot of experience get UFC opportunities because the UFC is just hoping something's going to break through here. I don't think this is the guy to do it. I like your mentality in terms of fading Petrowski. I don't think this is the fight to do it, but we'll see. Again, if you get this, you're a genius. If I get this, then I can say I told you so, but it's all good either way.
Hey, fair enough, James. And the best part is, though, I got plus 195 on it. I'm not betting a plus 110. I'm not betting a plus 125. This is big, fat, juicy 2-to-1 value. It's worth the roll of the dice for me here on this one. But anyway, let's move on here a little bit. Next fight up, Mr. Punchable Face himself, Makwan Amirkhani, comes in taking on Lerone Murphy. Both guys made 146. Makwan gave that little fist pump, knows he made weight. Looked good, honestly. He looked solid. Lerone Murphy absolutely shredded. I don't know how this guy makes 145. He is solid, got a ton of muscle on his body. One of the most intense face-offs of the day, and that's saying something because there's a lot of bad blood later on the card. These guys did not want to move. They had to get somebody to back off the stage first for them to get off the stage. I like Lerone Murphy here in this spot, but I hate the line, James. It's just too wide for my guy. What I am going to do is I sprinkled Lerone Murphy round 3 because we know Makwan Amirkhani has those gas tank issues. He doesn't manage himself very well. He gets tired late in the fight. I think that finish opportunity is going to open up. Just a little quarter unit at a 10-to-1 shot. I think that's worth a little sprinkle while I cheer for my guy Murphy. And then I got to bring the tinfoil hat back out, James. I got to bring it out. I talked about this on the Monday show, man. I think Lerone Murphy is hunting a submission. And what we've seen time and time again is he rolls for chokes, he jumps guillotines, he's attacking the neck. He has no submission wins on his record, but he wants one. And his opponent, Makwan Amirkhani, is a guy that's durable, gets tired, and sticks his neck into his opponent's guillotine position late in the fight when he's trying to get a takedown and he needs it to survive at the end of the fight. All those factors considered, 14-to-1, 12-to-1, whatever your book has on the submission prop, I think it's worth just a little bit of a sprinkle. So I got 2 sprinkles on this one, fully expecting Lerone Murphy to win. but not taking this one for any like big serious action, because if Makwan improves, if he shows up looking good, I can see his wrestling causing a bit of a problem, and maybe this fight goes to a split or something like that, and I don't want to be laying minus 350 if that's the case.
Yeah, we have one thing in agreement here. Lerone Murphy's awesome. The real deal. He's a guy they're going to start pushing really heavily when they start doing events back in the UK. I'm really high on Lerone. Almost got a chance to interview him this week. Just didn't work out with the timing, but I always like talking to him as well. And you're right, Amir Khan, he's got a punchable face. Although I found out when I got to speak to him in person a couple of years ago, he's actually a hockey fan. So that kind of made me not dislike him as much because of all that stuff. Remember Emerson Edem? You're probably not going to know that name. He played for the Anaheim Ducks, actually played for the Vancouver Canucks as well. For whatever reason, Amir Khan only follows like 20 people. For years, for whatever reason, he followed Emerson Edem on Twitter. Little random fact that any hockey fans want to know. I don't know why. I asked him about that. He didn't even really know why either. But that's aside the point. I'm actually going the other way on this one. I think this goes the distance. And the reason I think that is because of the fact that you got a guy like Edson Barbosa who wasn't able to finish Amir Khani. Amir Khani's never been submitted. So even that's why that submission prop's so high, is that Amir Khani hasn't, as far as I know, in the UFC has not been submitted. Murphy could do it. I actually like Murphy by decision at plus 190. I think there's some value there in the sense that, Murphy, there's a lot of bad blood there. You mentioned the durability of Amir Khani. I could see this one hitting the scorecards. Now, I know Murphy's knocked out guys like Ricardo Ramos. I think Amir Khani's a little bit more durable than that. Plus 190, almost 2-1 odds, 2-1 on the plus side of things. I'm actually going that way with Murphy because, I'm not going to lay that -3, whatever it was, on him as well. I might take the decision prop there. So we'll see. Different. We're obviously on the same guy, but just, different method.
And, honestly, James, I don't mind it. If you're looking to play a bit of a bigger bet than, getting the plus 200-ish line, like that's not a bad way to look. I'm doing a couple of low risk, high reward type of sprinkles where if I lose them, it's no skin off the back, that kind of thing. So I totally get what you're saying. This one absolutely could go the distance. We've seen both guys do it several times. So I don't hate it. That's not a bad look, and I'm glad we at least agree on the side. Next fight up, Shamil Gamzatov taking on Michel Lord Oleksiejczuk. Both guys came in at 205, and I got to tell you, this is one of the first things that really shocked me on this card, James, is that Shamil Gamzatov is bodied up. This guy was kind of a pudgy Russian the last time we saw him, not really the most physically intimidating type of guy, looked like the B squad of the Nurmagomedov team, and he showed up today rocking abs. Like, he is ready for this fight. This is not the Gamzatov that I am used to seeing, and while that doesn't completely change how I feel about the way the guy fights, you got to wonder in the layoff, he's another guy that's taken a good 2 years or so off, you got to wonder if we're going to see improvements. A lot of the things that we've talked about is him being a little low volume, kind of one of the Russian coasters. Maybe he gasses out and gets tired a little. Based off his physique, I think he probably has made some improvements in those areas. And if we see an improved Gamzatov, totally different ball game in my opinion. Now, Michel Oleksiejczuk, he looked good too, but he's always a bit of a soft body. He's never the type of guy that comes in shredded or looking hard or anything like that. So no surprise there. These guys size up pretty well. I think the big difference for me was how wide Gamzatov is. They're kind of 1-to-1. They're the same height. They look each other in the eyes, but Gamzatov is just doing, this thing when they're facing off. So, man, I thought about taking that little dog poke on Michel Oleksiejczuk. I think his speed, the fast hands, I think that was going to cause some problems, but the body of Gamzatov is enough for me to pass on this one at this point because we've seen Oleksiejczuk get out grappled by his opponents before, and if Shamil has fixed that gas tank concern, if he's in better shape for this fight, I could see him just grinding on Oleksiejczuk like a lot of people have done before, and heck, I could even see him getting the submission because Oleksiejczuk is a guy we've seen slow down due to grappling before as well. So I went from kind of a dog or pass spot to just completely passing on it and leaning a little bit with the favorite. How do you feel about this one?
Exact same way. Again, I hate to bore our audience here. This isn't going to be the Clinton James agree on everything show. No, I felt the same way. And part of the reason I think Shamil has looked in such great shape is that he hasn't fought in a while, right? November 2019 was the last time he was in with Klitson Abreu was his last fight. Oleksiejczuk, for me, it's just he's so inconsistent, right? Like sometimes you look at the Khalil Rountree fight, he looks good, and then he loses to Jimmy Crude, and then he barely beats Modestas Bukauskas, who's not even in the UFC anymore. So it's like, what are we sort of getting out of him at this point? This looks to me like a fight where they're trying to hype up this Russian guy, get him another win here. He's undefeated. That's something they can, sort of ride on as well. I think Shamil gets the win. This is a pass though for me as well. Just stay away from this one because the layoff's sort of one of the reasons I'm kind of staying away from this one. But no way will I pick Oleksiejczuk just because of his inconsistency. He's like OSP a little bit, like sometimes he'll get a good win and then, you see him have another opponent and you're like, why didn't he destroy him? How did he lose or how did he look bad in that fight,
I was completely expecting to be on Oleg Zaechuk and take a shot at the KO prop on this one here today, James. So, like, I really felt like this was, a bounce back, save your job, look good type of spot. But the way Khamzat came rolling in, I'm like, you know what? This looks more like the UFC going, hey, here's a guy with an okay name who's got a submission issue, who's got a grappling issue. Let's give him to one of our Russian fighters. So, yeah, staying clear away from this one for me now. Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos taking on Benoit Saint Denis, comes in at 170.5, does Elizeu Zaleski. Saint Denis 171 on the dot, made that weight there with the extra pound allowance. Dos Santos, he looked great. And I mean, he always looks great. He's another one of these consummate professional type of fighters, so we can't be too surprised that he came in here looking good. His opponent, Saint Denis, on the other hand, he looked amazing. He looked absolutely confident. This is another guy that's bodied up. He's in great shape. He's always been kind of a brick. But the biggest thing for me, James, was I was wanting to take a stab with the underdog here. I kind of wanted to, based on his grappling credentials and his ability to get this fight to the ground. When they face off, Dos Santos was massive. I mean, there's a big size difference between these guys. And that was kind of the big thing that I'm like, you know what? If Saint Denis can get this guy down, if he can wet blanket him, if he can maybe cause a scramble, possible submission, like, I like it. I think the UFC is throwing this guy into the fire on purpose because they see something in him. But at the end of the day, you got to look at maybe this is the biggest jump up in skill level we've ever seen. Like, going from the regional guys he was fighting to taking on Elizeu Zaleski, like, is such a massive skill differential that's something that I've kind of doubled back on. And then Elizeu Zaleski being the much bigger, stronger man. The other thing I looked at, James, is they were hanging the Elizeu Zaleski sub prop at 9-1. I can't stand by and let that go. So I put 1 unit on Zaleski dos Santos inside the distance because I know he likes to work with those hands. He could get the knockout. And then I took a half unit shot at that 9-1 sub prop because he's a black belt, man. I think Saint Denis, while he's a good grappler, while he's a strong individual, he's either a purple belt or a recently promoted brown belt. So the level difference on the ground is there. It exists, and Elizeu Zaleski's facing a guy whose best path to victory is on the ground, where he will be more than willing to engage in a grappling contest. So I think that sub prop is ridiculous, and it's one of those ones that could, like, in hindsight, we're all going to be kicking ourselves. Why the hell didn't we bet Dos Santos by sub at such a stupid number? So I got to take a shot at it, man. I got to take a sprinkle.
Not bad at all. It just reminded me of the Curtis Millender fight, right? Remember, Curtis Millender had all this, momentum, had a nice winning streak heading into that fight with Zaleski, and he submitted him in the first round, right? So really good ground game as well. Yeah, kind of like the fight we were talking about before with Petrosky. Another situation where you've got a guy who's just making a huge jump up or lack of experience. 8 fights for Benoit Saint Denis taking on Zaleski, who, at one point we thought was potentially going to be a contender. He's had a bit of rough luck lately in terms of some split decision losses and just some fights where he really hasn't performed, but this is a fight where he's going to look great. I love that inside the distance prop. I think that's probably the way this is going to end, is a finish. And really high on Zaleski.
Love it. I'm glad we agree there. This is one where, like I said, I kind of went tinfoil hat earlier in the week. I thought Benoit might be something I could take advantage of, but I needed a size advantage. I absolutely needed him to come in here, look like a monster, and be the bigger man. Without that, I don't think there's any hope. Next fight up, Albert Duraev taking on Roman Hopilov. Both guys came in at 186, and both of them look fantastic. Duraev making a quick turnaround, look good, look solid. Hopilov, he's had a bit of a layoff. He always looks in good shape. He's one of these guys, physically speaking, that's always pretty impressive. This is one of those ones where, Hopilov's got the height and reach advantage, but Duraev, he's a tank. He's got that broad muscle back type of advantage. And I've got Duraev closing out my parlay with Tagir from earlier in the night here. I made a rule, James, that if you're coming off the Contender Series, I do not parlay guys who are giant minus 300 favorites coming off the Contender Series. Here I am breaking that rule at the first opportunity because I just think Duraev is legit. And we saw Hopilov give up a bad position, a takedown, give up his back, and get choked out by a kickboxer. Duraev can absolutely do the same thing in this spot. If he forces Hopilov to grapple, he's eventually going to make a mistake. I do think he taps again. I'm expecting Duraev by sub, but the wet blanket, cage control, 15-minute decision, I think that's on the table too, which is why I went with the parlay instead of playing a prop. So how do you feel about this fight, man?
Yeah, to be honest, Duraev should have probably not been on Contender Series. Like, why is a guy with that many fights going on when you've got, other fighters that have 5 fights? Yeah, the layoff. I just think it's to me, that's one where, and obviously the UFC thinks very highly of him if they're booking him on this card, right? It's a big card, it's international, so there's obviously a lot there as well. Just sort of speaking of the optics of this, but I'm with you on the same side here. I think this is his fight to lose, and I think it's it's worth it to parlay him in the spot, just because I do think the UFC is very high on him, and I think Kopylov maybe not the same feeling there. So I like Duraev. Not much more to say about that. I think he gets it done.
Perfect. Glad we agree on that one. I know that's not one that the internet is really contesting. Pretty much everybody seems to be on Duraev, which is always a little terrifying, but I think we're right in this case. Ricardo Ramos taking on Zubaira Tuhugov. Both guys come in at 146. No issues for Ramos. Look good on the scales. Tuhugov, he was like crying on the scales today, man. He looked extremely relieved. I don't know if that's because he's battling something in his personal life, or if maybe he thought he was going to miss weight really bad and it was a tough cut. That's the type of emotion that, like, even though I'm the guy that literally reads too far into the weigh-ins, that's the point of this show, I don't know what to read into that. I don't know if he had a bad weight cut and was just relieved that he got there, or if he finally made it to fight day, overcame some demons, and had a hard time stepping in the cage this time around. I don't know, but it's enough to keep me off. Man, Ricardo Ramos, he's got those chin issues. I think he can get clipped and put down by just about anybody who hits hard in this weight class, and that's definitely something Zubaira Tuhugov does. He's another one of these B-string Russians, in my opinion, though. He doesn't have the gas tank or the grappling that some of the other guys do. He always finds himself in a split decision, so I don't really want to bet this one. I don't want to lay chalk, but I kind of feel like Zubi and Zubi by knockout are kind of the ways I would be leaning in this particular case. Any thoughts from you on this one?
Yeah, I actually, again, going the other way here, I think it's a decision more likely. I know Ramos has been finished. You look at who finished him, though, Lerone Murphy, a lot better of a fighter than Tuhugov, in my opinion. It would be great to figure out why he was upset. I'm going to throw a little sort of thing out here that it's too bad his management company, for whatever reason, is going out of their way to make sure their fighters don't get interviews. I don't know why that's the case, because that's something I think myself and a lot of other people would like to know, but that's a podcast for another day.
It helps us connect to the fighters, James.
Yeah, it's just so much easier to know these things, right? Like maybe there is a family tragedy. I don't know. Or maybe it is that he had a tough weight cut. I'm not sure. But either way, haven't been overly impressed with this guy. I know he's a teammate of Khabib, so automatically people think, oh, he's amazing. But a lot of his fights have gone the distance. I think that's how it'll go in this one as well. Ramos didn't look like he was at Team Alpha Male for this camp. I'm not sure. I didn't have a chance to speak to him. I would say no, because this is an international fight. So I don't think he would have gone all the way to the States, leaving Brazil and then going, internationally for this fight, but I'm not entirely sure there. But yeah, Tukulov by decision is actually the way I'm leaning here. I think Ramos will hold up in this weight class.
Okay. I like it. One that I'm not betting on. So, whatever you feel like, you go right ahead. I'm not going to argue it. Next fight up, the ladies of the evening. We've got Amanda Ribas taking on Virna Jandiroba. Ribas came in at 115 and a half. Jandiroba made 116. Ribas, I'll be honest, man, she looked a little bit worn. This is one of those ones where she got up there and she looked like she was having a tough time. She eventually cracked. She gave her a little smile, and at the face-offs, she was fine. She was her normal, happy, perky, giggly self. So I don't think it's something we should read too far into. I don't think it's going to affect her performance or anything like that. But on the scales, she definitely was wearing it. Virna Jandiroba, on the other hand, she was having fun. She was, winking, playing to the crowd, gave a good flex. Word on the street is she's going to come out to Island Boy as her walkout song, which is always going to be good for everybody. This is one where I've got a bit of a hot take, man. I'm taking the dog. I'm on Virna Jandiroba here. I think Ribas, first off, she just doesn't like to get hit. Virna's shown some level increases in her striking, and if anything, she hits hard. It's one of those ones where if she whiffs on 9 out of 10 punches but connects with one good one, that might be enough, because Ribas just kind of crumbles when she gets hit hard, and Virna definitely has some power. When it comes to the grappling, I think skill-wise, they kind of nullify each other, but I think Virna Jandiroba is the physically stronger fighter and potentially the better wrestler. So if she does want to take this thing to the ground, I think she'll be able to stay safe, stay defensive, and just kind of smother Ribas. I think she can bank 2 rounds, man, and if anybody's going to finish this fight, I think it would be Virna. Ribas has more technical striking, but she doesn't seem to have any pop on those punches. So while she might dance around, land some shots, look good for the camera, I don't think there's much finishing upside in this particular fight from Ribas. So I'm going to take a shot. I'm going to roll the dice on the dog, Virna Jandiroba.
I get it. I'm going the other way with Ribas. I think the Rodriguez fight was just that Rodriguez is that good, right? Like we're seeing her potentially, up there in that title conversation right now. We saw what she did to Mackenzie Dern. Marina Rodriguez is probably, way too overlooked in her career time and time again. But I don't think Jandiroba is Marina Rodriguez. I don't think she'll have the same success that Maria did, where she was able to finish Amanda Ribas. Ribas is, still a decent striker. You look at a lot of Jandiroba's wins; they're on the ground. I think Ribas can hold her own over there. She fought Mackenzie Dern and was able to get the win there And granted, Dern was coming off a long layoff and pregnancy and all that, or giving birth, I should say. I think the play here is actually the fight goes the distance. I don't think we'll see a finish in this one. If you want some better value, you can parlay the fight goes the distance prop with someone else on this card. There's actually someone I have in mind who we'll talk about here shortly. But yeah, I think this will go the distance. I think it'll be a close fight. If you want to pick one or the other, like I'm going to pick Ribas, but if you wanted to go Jandiroba, I don't mind that because I do think this is a 50-50 fight, but I don't think we'll see a finish in this fight. So I'm going, I know I'm picking a lot of decisions here, but this is another one for sure.
Hey, I don't hate the look, James. If you're winning and cashing a ticket, putting money in your pocket, it doesn't matter whether or not it's boring. If you get it done, that's what matters. So yeah. I don't hate the look. I'm taking Virna because, like you said, I think it's a 50-50 fight, so I'm getting that extra little bit of value. And then I think if there's a finish, it comes from Virna as opposed to coming from Ribas. So I want to, play that straight, make sure I get that included in there. But more than likely, this thing does go the distance. And I kind of like your look. Don't bother picking a side. Just take the over.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's worth it.
Next fight up, Magomed Ankalaev taking on Volkan, no time Oezdemir. We got both guys coming in at 205.5, and Magomed, another guy that looked really good on the scales today, another guy that you can tell is ready to step into the spotlight. Abs popping on this big boy, which is something we don't see all that often, so looking great. I like what I saw from Magomed. Volkan Oezdemir, on the other hand, he came in second to last, man. He was completely drained. He looked awful on the scales. I honestly thought he was going to miss. Like when he stepped up on the scales, I was confident that he was not going to make weight. So good on him. He got it done. He made the weight, but boy, did he look tired. And then when they faced off, Magomed is just bigger everywhere. He's taller. He's longer. His shoulders are more broad. Like he's just a big, massive mountain of a man. I kind of was flirting with the idea of Volkan Oezdemir earlier in the week. Never really had anything solid on it, but I felt like the line was maybe a little bit too wide. But the fact is, Magomed Ankalaev is potentially the future of this division. He's a guy the UFC believes in. He's never shown us anything that we should be concerned about when it comes to his skill set or anything like that. Volkan Oezdemir, if he's at all drained or, has problems with that weight cut, that's going to be even more of a chin concern for him. He's been chin checked several times, and we know how hard Ankalaev hits. So I'm kind of expected Ankalaev here. I think maybe this one gets dragged out late, maybe a more technical striking match, maybe Ankalaev by decision, something along those lines. But don't count a knockout out. With these two guys, that could happen at literally any point in time.
Yeah, you literally said exactly what I was thinking as well. I kept telling people on Monday, I was like, look, Ankalaev's great here, but you got to look at who he's fighting, right? Not the same guys that Oezdemir is. I mean, Ozdemir's losing to Yuri Prochazka. He's losing to guys like Dominic Reyes in a fight where I think people felt like Reyes should have not got that win. He went the distance with Rakic, right? I know people felt like Rakic won that, but still the fact that it even was that close shows you how good this guy is. And, look at this. Daniel Cormier, Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes, Rakic, Prochazka, and Latifi. That's a pretty strong schedule in that division. And Ankalaev, nothing against him here, but Ion Cutelaba, low-ranked light heavyweight, Krylov, not really as advertised, Dalcha, Kitson Abreu, Prashino. Like, you kind of get where I'm going here. It's great to look good when you're fighting guys that are a little bit less. But yeah, the scale concerned me today with Volkan, and you bring up a great point that, with him drained, he might be more susceptible to the knockout. I initially was going to say, hey, maybe you throw a little sprinkler on Volkan in this one. Now I'm not really feeling that way because it did look like a tough cut for him. I'm going Ankalaev in this one. Maybe the inside the distance prop is the way to go in this one just because of the chin issues there, but we'll see. I think Ankalaev's got a lot to prove in this fight. This is a prime opportunity for him to get to that next level against a guy that has fought nothing but killers throughout his UFC career. I
agree. Big step up for Ankalaev. I think he's ready for it, but Volkan can absolutely prove us all wrong on Saturday. So we'll see. That one will be fun. The big news, Jingliang taking on Khamzat Chimaev. Lee came in at 171, made weight, got it done. Khamzat on the other side of this thing missed weight, came in at 170.5 on his first attempt. Now, the Leech looked pumped up, man. He was screaming. He was energized. Like, this guy was looking good on the scales. Love everything we see from him. Khamzat, on the other hand, looked worn, man. He looked like he really tried to make the weight, really struggled, couldn't quite get it done, and they did not slap his wrists for the DC hand towel move, man. They went ahead, and instead of having the box of shame ready, they went with the towel, and he was very clearly resting his hands on the towel. So I am suspicious that he probably missed weight by about 2.5 pounds rather than just the half pound that got registered. And honestly, you'll have to forgive me. I didn't follow up. I think he had an hour to make weight. Do you know, did he actually end up making the weight, or did he not even try?
No, he made weight. He made weight.
Okay.
As far as I know, let me double. I'm pretty sure he did, but let me just double check that, because I think it would be a bigger story if he had missed. But certainly the towel thing. was complete BS. I mean, come on. Like,
no one said a word.
People are going to get defensive because it's Chimaev. If it's any other fighter, this is a bigger story, right? So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If this is anybody on the prelims, they're telling them to put their hands up, and no one wanted to touch Khamzat. They wanted him to make that weight on the first chance. So definitely a bit of a problem there. And maybe the most entertaining face-off of the day, man. These guys got into it with each other. Khamzat was coming forward and trying to get in the Leech's face, and the Leech was like screaming at him, and Dana White had to get between them. Like, this one was fun. This is going to be a great fight.
Yeah, 171 for Chimaev, so he does make the weight because it was just he was 171.5 the first time. I think you said 170.5 was 171, but no big deal. So yeah, he did end up making the weight, but that's got to be concerning. And here's the other thing as well, like, you know, you just came off COVID, you're coming off a long layoff. I do wonder why he decided to go to welterweight. You know, when you know it's a tougher cut for him than 185, like it just seems. You know, I don't know. I think this is a big risk here. And, you know, not just that, but look who you're fighting, a guy in Jingliang who is, you know, a mainstay in the weight class, who's fought really good guys throughout his career. He's, you know, been in there with some of the best. And I don't know. I just think this is, you know, obviously a lot of people are on Chimaev and think he should win. And I'm still going to pick him here. But I don't know. I got a lot of concerns after that weight cut because, you know, again, if you have a bad cut, you're more susceptible to the knockout. What did Jingliang do in his last fight? He knocked out a guy in Ponzinibbio. So, you know, we'll see.
I couldn't agree more, James. I mean, I've got 1 unit on Khamzat by knockout, plus 150. I think that's the way to go. I have my 100% Khamzat Chimaev record that I am putting on the line on Saturday, so hopefully he gets it done and keeps me batting 1,000. The Leech on the other side of this thing, though, he's made a career out of hurting people late, man. He takes tons of damage, stays in the fight, and then hits harder than you in the third round. We've seen him finish people late several times. So I'm tempted to just have a little taste, a little baby sprinkle on the Leech in round 3 because he's done it before, and there's so many questions about Khamzat. I do think he's legit. I do think he's the real deal, but coming off of having COVID, a bad case of COVID, having a rough weight cut, being in the lower weight class, like, you got to wonder if he doesn't finish the Leech early, what does he look like in round 2? We literally have no idea. So it's a big risk. I have not parlayed Khamzat. I would pressure everybody not to parlay Khamzat in this case because we are not going to know any of this stuff until he actually steps into the cage on Saturday.
Great point. Yeah, I agree. Be cautiously optimistic about this fight.
Correct. So I do have the 1 unit bet on Khamzat by knockout. You know what? They've got the Leech at, I think, 7-1 by knockout, which, like, if you're looking for a punt, if you're looking for a little bit of crazy action, like, these two are going to go to war in that first round. And if anybody gets out of the first round, the Leech might be the fresher guy in round 2. So I wouldn't hate a shot at that crazy line for a guy that wins most of his fights by knockout. So, you know, do with that what you will. I'm going to stick with Khamzat, but it's a crazy fight and anything can happen on that one. Next up, the big guns. Alexander Volkov taking on Marcin Tybura. Volkov came in at 263, and unfortunately the video cut out, man. I was watching this thing live with my boy Manpreet, MMA Lock of the Night. We stayed up until midnight watching these weigh-ins last night, and the video dropped for whatever reason. The guys that had the video going were having some fun and, like, stopped filming right when Alexander Volkov came on. So I only get to go based off him at the face-offs, not on the scales, but he came in at 263, so not struggling to make 265. These are heavyweights. You know, he probably doesn't cut a ton of weight, so it's fine. I'm not expecting much of a problem there. Marcin Tybura came in at 249, and honestly, I was a little impressed with the way he looked. He kind of got rid of that power gut, man. He has slimmed down a lot. He's riding a 5-fight win streak, and you can tell he took this camp seriously. This is a big opportunity for him, and I was hoping that he came in looking flabbier than he did, if I'm being honest. When they face off, definitely height and reach advantage for Alexander Volkov, but Marcin Tybura is not a small man. He's very tanky up there. Looks like he's got some, you know, broad thickness advantage here in this type of a spot. I am big on Alexander Volkov here, James. I brought back the 7-unit bet. This is my bomb of the night. He was supposed to be parlayed with Mason Jones from last week, but with Alan Patrick pulling out, unfortunately, the parlay got cut off, and it's just a straight bet on Alexander Volkov, which I don't mind, but the odds are much worse. I got minus 225 from much earlier, obviously. I think Volkov just rolls here, man. I think this is a massive difference between men. I think Volkov is a guy who, he's been my dark horse at heavyweight for years now, and he's only losing to to the tippy top tier of competition, whereas Marcin Tybura, yeah, he's on an impressive 5-fight win streak. Yeah, he's been active, but he's literally scraping the bottom of the barrel. He's fighting some guys that aren't even heavyweights. He's fighting guys that probably aren't going to have jobs very soon. And even, like, you know, you could make the argument that Volkov knocked out a chinny Alistair Overeem, but Overeem still would wreck any of the guys on Tybura's record as well. Tybura's got to grapple here, and Volkov's takedown defense is something, man. There's only one man who's been able to really give him trouble with the takedown, so I don't see anything happening that way on Saturday. I think Volkov wins this however he wants. I'm expecting a round 2 or round 3 knockout when Tybura just can't take it anymore, but it could be earlier. He could coast his way to a decision using the big cage. You know, the world is your oyster, Volkov. Just get it done for me, buddy. What do you got going on this one, James?
Feeling the exact same way. You literally said everything I was thinking. This is, remember I talked earlier about the Ribas, you know, fight goes the decision prop and parlay it with someone on this card. It's Volkov. Very high on Volkov in this fight. I just think, I mean, this is his fight to lose. You look at his losses. We're talking some of the top guys in the division. It's great that Marcin Tybura's had this nice winning streak. And again, you know, that's, you know, good to see him turn things around, because I was at that fight in Vancouver when Sakai knocked him out in, like, what was it, 30 seconds or something.
Yeah,
so
it was quick.
Glad to see he's rebounded from that. But yeah, Volkov's a different animal. He's one of those guys, kind of like Curtis Blades, even though Blades had already beat him, but one of those guys that just can't seem to get a title shot, but he's beating everyone else, and he's doing so impressively. So really like Volkov here. It's his fight to lose, unless he, you know, for whatever reason, just has a bad night. I think this is his fight to get it done. The question is, does he finish? I do wonder if that's a possibility. You know, Tybura has been finished, although last couple fights, obviously he's won them, so he hasn't lost that. But maybe a Volkov decision prop might be a little bit better. You take that, because typically Volkov, you know, doesn't get the finish, but, you know, it's only 3 rounds. But yeah, I really like Volkov here. I'm with you there. I think everything you said about going all in on him, I feel the same way. Of anyone on this card, I think Volkov's one of the safest bets.
I love it, man. And I think he's been drastically overlooked, because so many people are hyped on the Russians. You know, a guy coming off of a loss, even though it was to Cyril Gane, like, he just kind of got forgotten in this whole thing. I'm surprised he was hanging around like minus 290 on the money line this whole time. I think he should be like minus 400, minus 500 here in this spot. But everyone's piling on Islam Makhachev and stuff like that instead. I think this is the same type of setup. People just aren't noticing it. So I'm glad to hear that you agree with me, and hopefully 7-unit bet record stays batting 1,000. I've only ever had 2 of them, so this is my 3rd ever, and hopefully we'll stay 100% hit rate, man.
Love it.
Next up, the aforementioned Islam Makhachev taking on Dan Hooker. Makhachev comes in at 155.5, Hooker 156. And I'll be honest, Islam Makhachev looked a little rough on the scales, man. When he came out, his mouth was hanging wide open. He looked exhausted. Another one of these ones, though, that I don't want to get too worked up about it. He could have just gotten out of the sauna or gotten off the treadmill, something like that. You never know. He looked fine when they faced off, so I don't think it's going to affect his performance, but just got to make sure we note every little detail for people. Dan Hooker came out grinning, flexing. He was feeling himself on the scales today, man. He gave a couple of extra flexes, and boy, he is ready to go. Hooker is absolutely ready to go in this spot. When they faced off, Hooker's slight reach advantage. Looks like he's just a little hair taller, but we know that doesn't necessarily matter when you're on your back. Islam Makhachev looking to grapple in this spot. There's no secret about that, so very much striker versus grappler. James, everything in my soul wants me to bet Dan Hooker. He's plus 450, plus 500 out there right now, and I just think that's the kind of number on this kind of fighter that is stupid. Like, you should just never be getting that kind of number on a fighter with the skill set of Dan Hooker. The only problem is it also feels like it's a born loser, because Islam Makhachev has been anointed by Khabib himself to be the next king of 155, and we know Hooker can get out-grappled. We've seen it before. This is the guy that will do exactly that. So all the value on Hooker, and I still just can't quite bring myself to pull the trigger. Have you bet this one, or what are you doing?
I might throw a little bit on the Hooker by knockout. I think it's possible, right? You know,
like
Islam has been knocked out before in his career. And here's the thing, like, I don't put too much stock into this, but Islam really has to win this fight. Like, this is a legit opponent for him. You know, we've been hearing for years this guy's going to be the next champ. I remember Daniel Cormier coming to Toronto doing like a media tour. This was years ago. I want to say like 2016, and him telling me, you know, this is the guy, Islam Makhachev is going to be the future champion. And it hasn't happened yet. I mean, it still could happen. There's a variety of reasons for that, but there's so much pressure on Islam here. If Dan Hooker loses, big deal. He took this on short notice. He came straight from Vegas, where he didn't even get to go home home or anything like that. There's a million excuses he could use, I'm sure, mentally, of him not getting the win here. But Islam has to win this. If he doesn't win this, he's going to start to get that label of being that guy that, can't get over the hump or whatever. I know that's tough to say that with his winning streak, but you kind of get what I'm saying here. All the pressure's on Islam. I don't think there's any pressure on Dan Hooker in this fight. Yeah, the optics of him losing 3 of his last 4 would not look great, but still, it's not like the UFC is going to cut this guy. So, I mean, Islam's probably going to win a decision. He's going to out-grapple him. I had someone telling me that Islam's going to do what Chandler did. Islam's not Michael Chandler. He's a good fighter. He's a good grappler. He's a good wrestler, but he doesn't have the power that Michael Chandler has. So we can stop with that nonsense. But Islam most likely wins the decision. But can you imagine if Dan Hooker just lays a knee out there or something crazy? I mean, this guy trains at City Kickboxing.
I want it,
it's
James.
possible.
I want to see it.
I think the chaos that would ensue if a Dan Hooker knockout happened would just be something crazy. So I'm probably going to lay a little bit on that knockout prop just for the hell of it. I'm probably throwing my money away, but yeah, I think Islam probably wins the decision if we're being honest here.
I'll be honest, James, I am tempted by the exact same thing that you are, and I might actually go for that because we're already getting a number on Dan Hooker that we shouldn't be getting in 4 or 5 to 1, but the knockout prop is 11 to 1. You should never be getting that kind of number on Dan Hooker. You might want to look inside the distance rather than taking the KO, because I know no one's expecting Islam to tap, but we've seen Dan Hooker have some nasty chokes before. He's got those lanky long arms, and the thing that people forget is the club and sub is a real thing. When you're rocked, if he decides to go for the neck instead of punching, you end up losing that ticket that you've got by knockout because he went for the choke instead. So don't get too greedy, play it safe, take the inside the distance. It's still going to be just a massive number, I'm sure. Let me look up and see what exactly that would be, because I'm just now thinking about it as we're talking about it. Let's see. Hooker by sub is 25 to 1. Hooker inside the distance, I'm seeing plus 800, plus 750. So, that's another juicy number out there that you can just go ahead and chase if you want to. I don't mind it for a sprinkle. Dan Hooker is exactly the kind of guy that can light the world on fire, and I'm glad that you mentioned the pressure, James, because think about that. You grew up, and yeah, you're training in the same wrestling room as Khabib, but Khabib is literally 1 in a million. There is no other Khabib. So Khabib, Daniel Cormier, the teammates, the coaches, everyone keeps telling the world how amazing you are and how you're the next big thing. And some people are going to crumble under that pressure. And we don't know if it's his time yet. You know what I mean? This is still a young kid. He's still hungry. Maybe he slips up and makes a mistake. He'll be back. He definitely is not done. He could take the title later on in his life. But on this night, on Saturday, if he caves to that pressure, if he has a rough night, if he breaks mentally just ever so slightly, because he is not Khabib, he is Khabib's friend and training partner, Hooker's the type of guy that will come in, get it done, and grab that microphone and rip the best promo you have ever seen. So I'm definitely cheering for that to happen. No bets at this point. May sprinkle that Hooker inside the distance or knockout.
There you go. Great call.
I love it. I hope that happens so bad, James. I want to see it.
Yeah.
Petr Yan taking on Cory Sandhagen for the co-main event. Yan comes in. Actually, both guys came in at 135 on the dot. Yan was shredded and intense looking. I mean, flexing several times, making sure he got all his money's worth up there on the scales today. Cory Sandhagen just dialed in. This guy's like a calculated killer right now. He's focused. He's ready to go. Look great physically. At the face-offs, we know the height difference is going to be a real thing in this fight. That's going to be a problem, and Petr Yan's going to have to figure that out. Both guys absolutely confident in themselves. This is an absolute war, James. I cannot wait for this fight. And I'm riding the dog. I got plus 220 on Cory Sandhagen. I feel like this is just a pick'em style fight. And yeah, Yan might be the best. Yan might get his title. He might go out there and just destroy Cory Sandhagen. But I personally think this is going to look a lot like the Dillashaw fight. I think this is going to be a war. I think these guys are going to go tit for tat. And I think this is probably going to be 2-2 going into round 5. And whoever wants it more has to dig deep in that championship round. And because of that, I'm going to take the value on the dog. I'm riding that plus 220. I'm thinking Cory Sandhagen by split decision, James.
Well, you mentioned it there, the Dillashaw fight, which he ended up losing, right? And that's kind of the way I see this fight as well. I think with Sandhagen, to me, it's finish or bust with him. You look at a lot of the decisions he's won outside of the Rafael Sansa one, which he clearly won. Typically, when he goes the distance, they're in close fights. Remember that John Lineker fight? Very, very, very close fight. Cory is a finisher, and that's just not something that's going to bode well for a guy like, or it's not something that's going to bode well for him fighting Petr Yan, who's never been finished. We know Yan can take a punch. He's fought guys like Aldo, and he's been in there with, some of the best in the weight class. And I think that, really, if you want to simplify this fight, it's like Jan's never been finished. Sandhagen typically, his last 2 fights were finishes against guys who have been finished. So it's like that to me kind of makes it look like, Sandhagen, it's finish or bust for him. And we saw in the Dillashaw fight when he couldn't finish him, it becomes this very close matchup. And I just think, I know it's a great opportunity for Sandhagen. It was something he wasn't supposed to have right after losing to Dillashaw. Dillashaw's injured. They were going to go to Rob Font first. Rob Font gets COVID. He's not able to take the fight, so they have to push that fight with him. So that's why he's fighting Aldo. I don't know. I'd love to see Sandhagen win. It would really turn things upside down, especially with the Aljamain Sterling thing looming. But I think Jan wins. To me, kind of the best way I put it is Jan is sort of tried and tested. Like, we know that he's a really serviceable guy. He's like one of those cars that you can get through winter and you can get through without putting in any maintenance. It's going to be reliable for you. With Cory Sandhagen, right? There's that Sterling loss. There's the last fight, right, where he should have, I think, beat Dillashaw. So to me, that's kind of what I'm looking at here. I think Jan gets it done. I understand where you're coming from. I do sort of see it as a 50-50 fight, but I think if you're looking at it that way, I almost favor Jan in that sense, just because he's been more tried, tested, and true.
That makes sense. That makes sense, James. I think what made the fight last time so close was TJ's Dillashaw's willing and ability to wrestle. And I don't think Jan's going to do that. Now, I know Jan hits takedowns. Don't get me wrong. And I know people are looking at the Aljo fight where he hit a bunch of takedowns. But I think he's going to want to beat Cory at his own game here. And that's kind of what we've seen from Jan a lot, is he's definitely prideful enough to go out there and give a guy their best opportunity and then try and beat them at their game. And given that, I think the height and the reach are going to be a problem. And I don't think that Cory's going to get finished via strikes on the feet. We've seen him submitted before, but Jan is not a guy that goes down and chokes people out. So even if he does get a couple takedowns, I think it'll look a lot like the Dillashaw fight where he gets back up and forces it back to striking. And Jan has no problem with that. So because of that, like I said, I just think it's going to be close. And if you're giving me plus 200 on a guy that's maybe going to end up in a close, tight split decision, I'll take that all day. Every day I'll flip that coin. So I hope we get a good fight out of it. Hopefully Cory gets some payback here and gets a split decision after he lost that last one, which I cashed on that Dillashaw split decision, by the way. So I feel like I'm free rolling here a little bit.
Yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah,
I just want to see a good fight, man.
Yeah.
All right, main event time. We had not one, not two, but three men weigh in for the main event here. Jan Blachowicz, Glover Teixeira, and Jiri Prochazka all made 205. Jiri looking like an absolute monster, going to be sitting on the sidelines sipping Mai Tais on Saturday because both guys seem to be getting to the cage. Jan came in, dialed in, stoic as ever, looked great on the scales. Glover, he came in, he did his crossed arms things that we all love to see, and he looks ready to go too, if I'm being honest. Glover knows what's ahead of him right now, and he looks like he's ready to pounce. When they faced off, Glover is a little bit bigger than Jan is, and that's something that I think is a dangerous factor in this fight. This is, I know these guys are both extremely well-rounded, James, but it's almost a striker versus grappler situation. Because I think Jan is much cleaner on the feet, much more technical on the feet. I know Glover can box, but we've seen him hurt, we've seen him clipped, we've seen him rocked. He doesn't really want the fight to take place there. He's got a huge advantage grappling, and a kind of counterpoint to that, Jan has great takedown defense. He is not an easy man to get down. He's a harder man to keep there. But the fact is, the jiu-jitsu and the wrestling of Glover, once it gets there, if it does hit the mat, is levels above what Jan's got. He's going to have to get back up to his feet. So I am picking Jan to win this fight, but there's such a clear path to victory for Glover that I can't bet this guy at minus 300. I don't think that you can lay or parlay Jan in this spot. And I'll be honest with you, James, much like when Michael Bisping won the belt, this would be one of the all-time greatest feel-good stories in the UFC if Glover came back and won the title as a 42-year-old man just after his birthday, becoming the oldest champion in UFC history, a guy that's always been right there on the cusp of getting it and not quite able to grab it. I would love to see it. So there's a part of my heart that is just rooting right there with Glover. I don't think I can bet this fight. My action is going to be over at the co-main event so that I can just sit back and enjoy the main event and see what happens. Again, I'm going to pick Jan to win. I do think eventually he clips Glover with something big, but if this thing hits the ground, don't be surprised if Glover locks up another submission and goes home with 10 pounds of gold.
Yeah, I'm also staying away from this fight. It's too close to call. I think we've had enough examples now of what not to do against Glover Teixeira, which is what Thiago Santos and Anthony Smith did, which is I'm going to take him out early and I'm going to have a lot of success, and then I fade, and then the tide turns and I lose. I get finished, right? And Jan knows that. That's something I spoke to him ahead of this fight, and one of the things I said, do you think the blueprint is out there? And he said yes, and he's like, and obviously he's a smart guy too. I mean, look at that Izzy fight, right? Everyone was picking Izzy to win. Everyone thought, oh, double champ. Yeah, I mean, no one was even talking about Jan winning. It was all about how he's going to fight John Jones and all that. No, everyone did that, right? I mean, outside of Polish fans, I think most people did have Izzy in that fight, right? But the fact of the matter is, this is a guy that has continued to defy the odds. I think he's a little bit younger than Glover. Here's the other thing: like, is Glover at some point there's got to be a decline, right? Like, you thought it was a couple of years ago when he was getting finished. He's turned that around since then, but at 43, he's got to decline a little bit. Maybe in this fight, we see a little bit of that decline. Maybe a Jan Polish power punch is different than a Thiago Santos punch. I don't know. We'll have to find out here, but I'm staying away from this because I don't know how this is going to go. I think I could see a late finish. I could see Jan maybe clipping him early, and the old Glover, it's like a situation like he had earlier in his career. I could see a decision where Glover's just so durable and, it doesn't happen. I don't think Jan's going to get caught in a submission or anything like that. I think this is just a fight you sit back and you enjoy, and you just say, this is such a cool fight that we'll probably never see again, of two guys that are that old, that have had such a good redemption story on both of their ends, fighting each other. That's how I feel. I'm absolutely staying away from this fight.
I couldn't agree more, James. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I think it's going to be fun. I love the fight IQ from Jan. He was my 205 dark horse. I've been betting, actually not one, but both of these guys for the majority of their most recent fights, because I've called that they're underrated and they're underappreciated, and we've been getting good numbers on them. Now that they clash, I'm like, I kind of feel like I have to look dog or pass if I'm going to bet it at all. And I'm just going to choose to fireball and popcorn, man. I'm going to get a drink. I'm going to sit down with a snack. Actually, let me correct that. These are morning fights, James. It's mimosas and waffles. You get some breakfast. You get something good to drink. Enjoy this fight and just, root for your side, basically, because it's going to be kind of a feel-good story no matter who gets it done. And I kind of want to see Glover with gold, so I'm going to end up passing on this thing from a betting perspective.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, unless we're on this different time zone. Is it not going to be close to lunchtime? Because I believe the main card starts at 2 p.m. Eastern time, so it's 11 Pacific. You're on
by
Mountain
the time
or
the
Pacific,
main event rolls around. Yeah.
It'll be closer to lunchtime though. So yeah, I was going to say brunch, but I think it's closer to lunchtime by the time that the card actually kicks off. But we'll see. The main event, I should say. So we'll see.
Yeah, by the time the main event rolls around, we can start drinking officially, so it'll be fine by then.
There you go. That's kind of what I was getting at, giving you permission to drink. So there you go.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. So that is the Undefeated post-weigh-in show, folks. I hope you enjoyed having my guy James here on the show. James, thank you so much for joining me for this one. We went a little over what I expected to, so I apologize. If you want to let the people know where they can find you, your moment to shout out, let them know where you're at, go right ahead, man.
First off, never apologize. Okay, I ramble as well, so that's kind of why this went a little bit over. This is typically what we do when we get together and do these podcasts. At Lynch on Sports, everywhere, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I'm always putting my interviews on there. I just talked to Javid Basharat, the guy who won on Contender Series, who beat that guy up pretty decisively. The guy who made that dumb comment, and that's up on my YouTube channel right now, and got a lot of other stuff in the works. But thanks so much for having me on, man. I'll always appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, James. Thank you for making the time for us. Good luck to everybody on your degenerate action. Hope this final recap helps you make some good bets and put some money in your pockets. We'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning for these fights. UFC 267. Let's roll.